Damien English, I mean, we had Robert Troy, we had a slightly different thing with Darragh Cleary. It wasn't about filling out forms, but we have had this whole thing of SIPO and filling out declarations properly. The amazing thing about all of this is this was all in the news a few months ago. Every politician of every stripe across the Dáil, I don't know, yourself or others, everyone said, OK, you know, he made a mistake. We'll all have a fresh look at our forms, make sure everything's in there. Where was Damien English when that happened, surely?
And this is why Damien made the decision to resign this morning. This is why the decision was made by the Taoiseach, obviously, to accept his resignation. And I have a very, very high recognition of how hard Damien has worked as a TD and as a minister. But this is something that should have been declared.
Because he would have been sitting around during the whole Robert Troy controversy. Surely he would have said, let me go back and make sure mine are all tied down. And you wouldn't have thought, wouldn't you have thought yourself?
And maybe this is one of the ingredients that led Damien to decide that the best thing for him to do was to resign quickly and to recognise what had happened. He has said himself that this is a requirement that should have been met, and he resigned in recognition of the seriousness of the issue.
How disappointed were you yourself? You know, this is in the Fine Gael party. It's one of your own that has made the mess up here. You must have been disappointing.
I'm disappointed on two counts. Of course, I'm disappointed that the correct information was not supplied at the right point. I also know how hard Damien has worked and does work as a minister, as a TD. I've known him for many, many years. And it's a pity to see that kind of work end in this way. But the key thing is that this is a requirement that should have been fulfilled, it should have been met, and Damien has recognised that by resigning himself.
Do you think there's a cultural thing with here, and then it's politicians as a profession, I suppose, of just not taking these forms seriously enough, like the rest of us have to do when we do our annual tax return and a whole range of other state forms? Is this the issue? And I know it's not party, but just politicians seem to be rather blasé about filling these things out.
I don't think such a culture is there. If there was a impression of it not being taken seriously, or God forbid, impunity, then Damien would still be in office. He's decided to resign because we have to meet, and we should meet, exactly the same standards as everybody else. And when issues develop that are as serious as this in relation to a property, that has to be then recognised by action that is taken, which has happened.
Because there's somebody out there, probably a few people out there in Meath, who didn't get a house because he filled this form incorrectly. That's theoretically possible, at the very least.
I understand this is about the granting of planning permission, so therefore you are correct, given the limitations that are there in terms of the granting of planning permission. But this is a really serious issue, and as much as I recognise the work that Damien has done, I equally recognise that the appropriate action to take is to recognise the seriousness of this matter and to offer his resignation to the Taoiseach.
Do you think we need to concentrate minds a little bit more, concentrate political minds? The sanction here is, yes, he loses his ministerial role. That is a sanction. He's doing it voluntarily. But a lot of people would say it needs to be tougher, possibly losing of a seat, maybe even a financial fine. Like, how do we concentrate minds where the politicians say, well, at worst, I'll be out of office for a year or two and I can come back in, like Darragh Cleary did, admittedly in another context. So should we not be tougher if this just drips and drips and drips, and the forms and SIPO constantly re-emphasising the message? Do we need to toughen it up and say, no, the sanction should be more?
Well, I believe the forfeiture of ministerial office and the resignation from it is a really big recognition of the seriousness of the matter. I don't believe it should go beyond the resignation of a Dáil seat. I do believe those who have...
Financial fine? Penalty? It's what the rest of us have to put up with, right?
But on the other hand, what he is doing is resigning from a job, resigning from an office that is very important within our state, that would have meant an awful lot to him. In terms of the point regarding your membership of Dáil Éireann, my own view is really the only people who should determine whether you're in Dáil Éireann or not are the electorate, and they decide if they want you to represent them or not. And what Damien has done in forfeiting and resigning from office that really matters to him is recognising the seriousness of what has happened.
Who should we get in next? Or any thought being given to that
No,
yet? Or
that's
party
very much
leaders going to look at this? Or
that's a matter for the Taoiseach, and it's a matter for him to decide upon. It's not something that I'm afraid I'd be able to offer a view on.
No, and the Ditch website, I mean, they've now claimed 2 scalps. I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it, that this one particular media outlet has fingered 2 politicians, and both have had to resign.
I would prefer just to focus on the fact that there are standards that we have to meet, and it's up to any journalistic organisation, any of your colleagues, to decide what you form a view on. Why it is written, or the nature of it, is a matter for journalists, and we operate in a free society that has many different important consequences. The key thing I want to recognise as a politician is there are particular standards, particularly when it comes to planning, and that need to be met. In this case, it wasn't met, and Damien has recognised that.
Because I think the public's patience on this is kind of running low. I think if there's a third one, I think that the reception would be pretty hostile, to put it mildly.